Hello students, as we all know, TSPSC Group 2 syllabus has been changed. There have been a few topics that have been added to Indian polity, a few topics to Indian society and formation, but there has been substantial change in paper 3, that is Indian economy, Telangana economy and development and change. Now in this video, I'll basically tell you the changes that happened in Indian polity and how detailed should be your approach to these changes. What should be the best way possible to study this? Basically, in this module, I'm going to cover all the additional topics that have been added, along with around 150 practice questions, because these questions and the 20 hours of classes that I'm going to take in this module will help you to comprehensively cover not just the additional areas but also revise a part of the syllabus. So let me just tell you what has been added and how do we approach this. First, let's understand the overview of the syllabus, the changes that took place in the syllabus. Now, this is your latest syllabus. The first chapter remains as it is. There has been no change in it. The second chapter also remains as it is. The second, third, fourth chapters, all these remain the same. The only difference is this Indian Constitution and amendment procedures and amendment acts. This has been exclusively added in the syllabus after the change. Earlier also, you were reading constitutional amendment and important amendments to the constitution till date, but it was never mentioned separately in your syllabus. Now what they have done is they have mentioned amendment procedure and amendment acts separately, which means you have to be thorough with this topic. There is a probability of getting questions from this topic. Usually what happens is whatever is directly mentioned in the syllabus, there is a great likelihood that you'll get more questions on those topics. అందుకే we say that the syllabus should be completely covered. Comprehensive coverage of syllabus is very important. Having a complete idea of the syllabus is very important. Ensure that you have prepared on each and every term that is given in your syllabus. So this is the first area that has been added. Now along with this, the second area that has been added, this remains the same. There has been no change in this. In this, earlier you had electoral mechanism, electoral laws was not there. They just asked about Election Commission of India. Then they asked about the election malpractices, the electoral reforms till date. Electoral laws topic was not there. Now what happens is under electoral laws, you have to study about the various electoral laws that are there in India briefly, but in a greater detail, the Representation of Peoples Act 1951. Next explanation, though, I'll expand these topics and I'll tell you what all would be covered. Judicial system in India remains the same. The ninth chapter remains the same. There is no change in it. The 10th chapter basically was Indian Constitution New Challenges. Earlier in the syllabus, this chapter was called Indian Constitution New Challenges. Aditi see what they did now is they removed it and they said that it is going to be national integration issues and challenges, insurgency, internal security, interstate disputes. Internal security is a very broad topic. For civil services mains, it is a 50 marks topic. So how do we approach it for group 2 and how do we approach it keeping in mind that group 2 is MCQ based exam ante objective type exam ki internal security etla chadvali. Lot of students have been requesting for this, so andukane we thought we will do a module on this. అయితే ఇప్పుడు మీరు పాలిటీలో నేను ఇంతకు ముందు చెప్పినట్టు these areas have been added. So first let me tell you about the area that has been added and what do we do to approach it. Amendment procedure you have already studied under Article 368. You should basically be completely aware of what is given under Article 368, followed by the doctrine of basic structure. You should know every detail about the doctrine of basic structure. For example, many students are not aware that the basic structure has never been defined by the Supreme Court. Then what did Supreme Court do? It only identified the features of basic structure. So you should be very clear about what is basic structure, why did Supreme Court bring it, what is the content of the basic structure. And the syllabus says amendment acts. then you are bound to get questions on constitutional amendments. So we should be aware of all amendments, important amendments till date, with along with the important connects to those amendments. For example, you should know the committees associated. For some amendments, you should know who was the prime minister. For some amendments, you should know whether there was a Supreme Court judgment which formed the basis for that particular amendment. For example, 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act was basically enacted by Indira Gandhi after her election was declared invalid by the Allahabad High Court, and it was done during the national emergency period. So these backgrounders for the amendments are also important, which will be covered in the module. The second part that is mentioned in your syllabus is electoral election mechanisms. So basically, electoral mechanisms. Basically, in this, they have specifically mentioned one, electoral laws. There are about 8 laws that are related to elections in India. What do you mean by electoral laws? Those laws which form the basis for conducting elections in India. There are nearly 8 laws which are related to elections in India. Out of these 6 laws, you just need to know the name of the law, key provisions of the law, and they are very small. Kani, there are 2 laws which are very important. You have to know in detail about them. One is the Representation of Peoples Act 1951, which has to be covered in detail for 2 reasons. One is it is the most important election law in India. In India, elections are held on the basis of the provisions of Electoral Representation of Peoples Act 1951. Election Commission draws a lot of its powers from there. The second reason why you should know about a Representation of Peoples Act 1951 is the RP Act 1951 is significant from the perspective that most of the electoral reforms that we talk about in India today, they actually happen to the RP Act, to the Representation of Peoples Act 1951. Therefore, the Representation of Peoples Act 1951 becomes very, very important. That is about the electoral laws. The next thing that has been mentioned is Election Commission of India. General గా మనం ఎలక్షన్ కమిషన్ గురించి ఎట్లా చదువుతామంటే, by how do we prepare about election commission? We just know the article number it is related to it. We know what is the content of the article, who appoints, how many members, and so on, and we know about the powers and functions of election commission. Here we have to go into a little detail. I'm also going to tell you the cases related to election commission, the committees that recommended on election commission, and a few factual details about the election commission of India. Then tarvata, the next thing that we have to be aware is political parties. This topic was not earlier mentioned in your syllabus, but it is added now. Now, in political parties, you should basically know what is a political party. First, understand the definition of political party, why political parties are important, how do you register a political party, how is a political party recognized as a national party and a state party. These details are important under political parties. The next that is given in your syllabus is anti-defection law. Anti-defection law has been separately listed in your syllabus, so you have to know complete detail about the anti-defection law, right from the committee associated with it, the constitutional provisions, the various terms that are used related to anti-defection, and so on. The next topic that is given in your syllabus is electoral reforms. First, we understand the meaning of electoral reforms, the meaning of free and fair elections, all important electoral reforms from 1950s till date, including the recent reform of allowing vote from home of in the Karnataka elections. The election commission has decided to allow people to vote from their houses in Karnataka elections. So all these points, including the committees associated with electoral reforms, will be covered under electoral reform. So all these topics will come under election mechanisms. After amendment procedure and election mechanisms, the third and the most important area that has been added and that is becoming a major challenge for most of you is national integration issues and challenges. Basically, what are threats to national integration? When we talk about this, casteism, communalism, regionalism, all these are considered as threats to national integration. However, in the syllabus right now, they have specifically mentioned what threats you have to study. One is that is mentioned is insurgency. The second that is mentioned is internal security. Internal security, as I said earlier, is a very lengthy area. It's a very broad based area. So, what should you study specifically for MCQs in internal security is important. The third is interstate disputes. Interstate disputes is a part of center state relations, but it has been specifically separately mentioned. Now, what are we going to study about this? The first thing that you have to know is what is the meaning of insurgency? How do you define the term insurgency? Then tarvata you should know the causes for insurgency in India. Where all do you have this issue of insurgency? For example, when you talk about Northeast, we say there is insurgency. So you have to know insurgency issues in India, where they are, the locations where you have insurgency, and what measures the government has taken to address insurgency. Then, internal security, you have to not just know the meaning of internal security, but there are several other terms that are associated with internal security. For example, when I discuss about the causes of internal security, I will talk about terrorism being a cause, terrorism being a threat. Rather than causes, let's use the word threats. Threats to internal security, we say that terrorism is a threat, extremism is a threat. So, how do you define extremism? How do you define terrorism? Then we come across words like state, non state actor, and so on. So, we are going to discuss all these threats with the meaning of the terms. There is a greater chance that they will give questions on the terms related to internal security. Then we have to know the various measures initiated by government in addressing the threats to internal security. The measures are in terms of laws and in terms of the various forces that are formed, especially the paramilitary forces. So, laws will include laws like the National Security Act, the National Investigation Agency Act. Then you have Money Laundering, Prevention of Money Laundering Act. All these acts will come, all these laws you should study. And all these laws are very, very broad based. దాంట్లో ఏం చదవాలి? We are going to specifically identify those provisions which are relevant to your syllabus, where you can get an MCQ, multiple choice question. So I'm going to teach you all that. Forces lo kuda you should know about the background of each force. You have to know about the forces as well as agencies. For example, you have RAW, you have IB. You should know about what will RAW do, what is the role of IB, which one came when were they formed, and all that. All those would come in agency. So these are the measures. And what are the challenges that we face despite these measures? We have to discuss this. Now, interstate disputes, the first thing that you should know is causes of interstate disputes. Then, what are the various measures that have been taken by the government to address interstate disputes? Like you have various bodies constituted for it, such as the interstate council, the zonal councils, and so on. Then you should also know what has been Supreme Court's contribution to resolve interstate disputes. Interstate disputes, an important aspect of interstate disputes is river water disputes. So we should know about the Interstate River Water Disputes Tribunal. Then we have river management boards. Andhra Pradesh and Telangana ki we have a conflict with river distribution, river water. So you should know about river water management boards. All these things will come under measures. Then we have to look at whether there are any committees which have recommended to resolve interstate disputes, like the Sarkaria Commission and the Madan Mohan Punchi Commission, only to the extent of what have they recommended on interstate disputes. And finally, after we read all this, the most important thing that we should know is internal security is a subject in which list? Certain terms related to internal security are mentioned in which list and which ministry is responsible for it. So, this is how we have to cover the additional areas that have been added in your syllabus. As I said, this module will have around 20 hours, and it will also contain around 150 questions framed by me, so that you have complete practice on whatever has been taught to you. As I said, this module will not is not just specific to what has been added. It will also help you to revise topics like amendment procedure, topics like anti-defection law. So these things can also be revised along with the classes. So this is about the module on the additional syllabus that has been included in Polity. Please download the app to watch these classes, and we are going to start a few. We are going to start a few more modules on the various aspects of syllabus, especially those areas which have been newly added, so that you don't have to worry about from where to read, from where do I get the information and all that. Thank you.